Okay, everybody, I am joined here today by Santosh Sharan. Very excited to have you on board. Thank you for making the time. I know you're very, very busy with a new venture, which we're going to talk a little bit about. But typically, what I like to do for the audience in advance is kind of give them a little bit of background on you, what you've been doing, and then maybe you could fill in some of the gaps where you feel it's appropriate. And then at some point during the conversation, I'd love to talk to you about the new adventure.
Absolutely.
How does that sound?
I'll look forward. And thanks for doing this, Jeff.
Sure.
Really good to reconnect.
For those of you that don't know, Santosh and I, we used to work together at one of the firms in the data space. I think it's probably better to say that you've worked for all of the data firms in the space rather than just a few.
Pretty much.
But yeah, I do recall this was at LeadGenesys, Berkeley. And I do remember prior to you joining, I was there and Mark Godley said, "Oh, Santosh is going to be coming on board." And I did a Google search and I got very excited when I saw that you were at Everstring, which is an intent solution. And then I did a little bit more digging and saw that you were an advisor at HG Insights. And prior to that, you were the vice president of product and growth at ZoomInfo. So I was like, oh man, this guy's going to come into LeadGenesys and knock it out of the ballpark. And since then, actually gone on to be an advisor to a lot of other data firms.
That's right.
And you were also the president and chief operating officer at Apollo, which everybody in the audience knows. You were an advisor to Gong. Very recently at RB2B. Almost everybody here knows RB2B. And now you're moving on to a new venture, which must be like a burning problem that you feel needs to be solved in order to have actually left RB2B. So I definitely want to talk to you about that. But before we get into it, is there anything I missed on your background that you want to share with the audience, or maybe why you've been so enamored with the data space?
Well, my love for the data space started almost 15, 17 years ago when LinkedIn went for an IPO. And I invested some money and I was reading the prospectus. And the reason I love data is it's an unusual commodity. There's like marginal cost of data is zero. So you can sell the same data again and again. The funny thing is the way the data economics work is more data actually adds more value. It doesn't dilute value. You can turn it around 3 different ways and sell 3 different subscriptions to the same data. There's so much of creativity that you can apply. A data company should be like really profitable, far more than SaaS companies, if done right. And this is
Sure.
what got me started. And since then, I haven't left the data space for the large part.
Okay. Obviously, everybody listening to this is very interested in scaling their own businesses. They typically range from startups all the way to public companies, but mostly like pre-IPO. And there are a lot of challenges, of course, involved in scaling businesses. You have a wealth of expertise in scaling businesses, specifically B2B revenue. And I'm kind of curious to get your perspective. The landscape is changing a lot right now. What do you see as one of the biggest challenges in being able to very efficiently scale B2B revenue today?
I have a couple of different perspectives to scaling business. So let me start that and then I'll answer your question more directly. I think most businesses want to grow because businesses are just a reflection of the individuals and all of us want to grow, right? The reason we don't is because we put so much of friction in front of us. We're just using strategies that just don't work with the buyers or the ecosystem we are working on. Once you remove those strategies, it's very natural for most companies to just grow. If you're a growth person and thinking about how to grow, look for friction that you're putting in your process. To answer your question more directly, Jeff, I love the time we're going through. We're undergoing massive time of transition.
For sure.
Right? The way business is being done. It's not just business in a personal life with AI and with growing inflation. We just had higher cost of capital. All this is happening, some impact in our life, which is not too different from the way COVID had an impact. COVID impacted business in ways that we are still feeling, and we're undergoing something of similar magnitude. And this is not something to be afraid of. If anything, this is a great opportunity for folks that decipher and leverage it, take advantage of this for your own business. So more specifically, what do you do to grow? Now with AI tools, you can grow business very profitably and people should take advantage of it. Like at RB2B, at the last gig, we made a rule. We're just not going to hire more than 1 engineer or 1 support person and have no sales, no marketing, no CS. And with 5 or 6 people, we got to 4.5, close to 5 million in revenue in just 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
That is just a great case study of how business growth should happen. Now think about the buyers. The old way of growing was where you invest in a lot of sales team and SDRs and CS and so on and go after the buyers. Now, I think the new way of growing is use LinkedIn. Now, it may not work for all businesses, but the ones that it does work for, especially Texas, leveraging LinkedIn is so much more profitable because then you collapse the funnel, you get bursts of leads all of a sudden, all at once, and then it's just so profitable. And execs have to take the charge in doing this rather than sales teams. But that's completely untapped potential. Growth teams can unlock a lot of value by honing up their LinkedIn skills.
That's a very good point. And obviously, one of the reasons why you guys were so successful at RB2B is because of the founder-led content that you were putting out there. I have to assume a very big portion of your day was allocated to just generating content. What are you going to talk about? There are two things that I want to delve into on that. One is, do you have a rough outline or some broad strokes to share on how to make that shift away from the standard or old way of doing business and allocating much more of your time to generating this founder-led content? And then the other thing is, if you are able to make that shift, are there some pitfalls maybe that you've encountered or that you'd want to share with folks who want to make that shift, pitfalls that they can avoid?
Absolutely. Those are two great questions. The old way of doing business was maximizing activity. New way of doing business is maximizing trust. And how do you build trust? So buyers are on these platforms, and LinkedIn is one of the biggest platforms, but you can go at other platforms as well, Twitter or your own private community if you have one and so on. But you got to build trust. Now, you can get on a call with somebody and build trust and credibility, but that's a very expensive way of doing it. The right way to build trust is one-to-many, right? Can you write a post that 100,000 people read, and now you are generating trust and credibility about your tool and differentiating against 20 other tools out there, right? And once they start building trust, now if your sales rep reaches out, guess what? That email, they are going to respond to the email while ignoring the 20 other emails from other vendors because they begin to recognize your brand.
Right.
There's almost no other way to sell because in the past, companies build brand, right? So then like if something from Microsoft came into my inbox, I'd probably read it. Now, I don't care about Microsoft or Google but then an employee at Microsoft, right? I do pay attention. Or Satya Nadella says something, I do pay attention. So brands are being built by individuals, not companies. Nobody trusts companies anymore because companies were just writing whatever served them. But similarly, CEOs or execs have to generate this one-to-many trust and provide air cover for the sales team. And that's the new way of doing go-to-market. You asked, what are the pitfalls? So one of the pitfalls we saw at RB2B, which I'm learning from, and hopefully I'll take care of it, is there is a right balance to be had when you are sharing too much. Does it generate so much excitement that in 6 months you end up having 20 different competitors, right? Because you're also sharing your business plan and your entire playbook, and then it just lowers the hurdle for somebody to become your competitor.
Yeah.
And we saw some of that happen with RB2B.
Sure.
We were the first ones to roll this out, but then in no time, there were like 15, 20 others. And we grew fast, but maybe we could have grown 3 times more if we didn't have those competitors. And it's hard to roll back and see whether we caused it or it was going to come anyway. We certainly helped. If I were doing this again, I would still create thought leadership, but maybe prevent some key aspects of business building, some of the key lessons on LinkedIn or sharing with competitors. So that's the one lessons I've learned recently.
So you're saying it's more about, like, you're not as concerned about sharing features and functionality, which could very easily be copied, but it's more about how do you scale quickly? There's some secret sauce there that even if somebody looks at your product,
so let me,
if they go about it the wrong way, they won't scale as quickly.
So let me rephrase, see if I can take another stab at it. But you're right. I love to say this again indifferently. To build thought leadership, I have to talk about the domain, the problem I'm solving with my customer, right? I don't have to talk about how I'm building the business. My customers don't care about that as much. My competitors care, right? If I'm very transparent, I'll go ahead, talk about all the problems I'm facing and how I'm solving my business problems, which my customers really don't care, right? It's my competitors who care. So I guess this is where you have to draw a fine line on, are you talking to your customer all the time? At RB2B, one of our, I guess, ICP was also founders of companies. We were trying to help them. So we went ahead and spoke to the founders about the business challenges and how we were solving. So we kind of gave a blueprint of how to scale a business like RB2B, which probably helped, some of which, if you asked me, I could have done different. I would probably not share some of those and just focus on talking to the customers.
It's a key nugget to share, especially for startups that do want to embrace this new way of going to market with key insights from the founders. There's a second part, or really a third part to it, which is, let's say you've embraced this new go-to-market strategy, but you're thinking, gosh, the stuff that I have to share, it's already been said before. And I suffer from this myself. It's like, I talk like till I'm blue in the face about B2B marketing strategy. And it comes very naturally to me and like, hey, this is the right way to execute. And I always think, gosh, everybody should know this. But in reality, a lot of people don't. They're encountering this information for the very first time. But there is that mindset. And I'm wondering if you have ever encountered that. And then what do you do in order to just get it out there anyway?
You are absolutely right. I guess in the beginning, I might have had the same feeling, but after a few posts, you realize that LinkedIn has no memory in a way. Every post you are posting, in a few hours, in a few days, it just goes away and nobody will ever look back at it. So what that means is even great posts in your content, somebody posted the exact same thing or something similar, nobody remembers after a while. And even if you post something, the same topic, you're just reminding them, right? So these are bite-sized insight that everybody needs to be reminded of. People do appreciate. LinkedIn is also a machine where it's not like a university where you are really going to learn something new. People engage with posts that they already believe in, that they're already following most of those techniques. Maybe you gave them one or two extra pointers. That's something to. And the third point here is people want to hear. If you have a small audience, think about, they just want to know who Jeff is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you tend to have the same perspective on demand gen or lead gen as others, they want to know if you have the same perspective, right? They don't care if it's the same. You don't have to worry if somebody else, their opinions are exact same as yours. So then you're not adding value. But chances are, if I'm in your audience, I'm more interested in knowing who you are, what you are interested in. So I don't worry about all that. My process, you alluded to this earlier, that it must be taking a lot of time. It actually doesn't take much time. I have perfected the process to a point where I spend not more than 2 or 3 hours a week.
Oh, that's great.
So here's what I do if you're interested.
Sure.
Throughout the week, as I am going through my rhythm of work and I run into challenges, or if I'm having a conversation and something comes up, and I have a notepad open all the time and I keep adding ideas. And then on Sunday, I block 3 hours or so. And then I go through all my notes and I pick up 2 or 3 that I want to write about. I basically spend the next 2-3 hours. And then over the week, we find a way to schedule these posts. So I'm only responding to comments, but I work on it over the week. Stress on getting it perfect. Now I try not to spend a lot of time. I just get it out there.
Are there certain tools that you use in the process of researching or creating the content? I'm sure there's like the Perplexity and other things out there. What kind of solutions do you use?
Actually, almost none. Well, I do research. I have to. So I go online and use Google, but I try not to use any of the ChatGPT or Perplexity to write, to do copy. I have tried and the posts don't do as well because I feel like people, they're getting tuned. They're learning how to like screen some of this out or provide lower credibility. Also at Retention, we had this coach that advised us to kind of not use any copy tools.
Okay. Now switching away from content to product. And before we get into talking about your next venture, I'd love to get your perspective on the landscape as we see it today, which is shifting quickly, dramatically. There's a lot of new shiny objects that are coming into the space and they look very enticing. And I'm curious if you have any advice to any of the marketers out there that want to play with these things. How would you recommend that they go about investigating and selecting the right tool?
Yeah, that's a great point. I feel like every time there is some mega trends that we go for. So any tool that we select, like AI, let's say, you can use AI to send more emails because you can easily copy and personalize, or you can use AI to narrow down and send less email. I think the mega trend is that going to shift from more outreach to less outreach. And there's signs everywhere. So I would say if you're picking up a strategy or picking up a tool, find a tool that actually aligns with this mega trend. Or if you're starting a company, like this is not a time to start a company that will like do more bulk outreach or more.
Yeah.
This is the time to do more insights. Right. So like what RB2B did was it reduced the need for bulk outreach because now you are sending outreach only to people that visited your website. And that's welcome. That goes with the trend, right? So when I look at all those shiny objects, that's kind of one I apply is it going to align with the future that we all share or envision? The second big theme, SaaS got bloated in the last 10, 20 years. So
True.
we end up with like so many different tools. I think other mega trend is it's all going to consolidate around agents. So like there's a best in breed 10 years, 20 years ago. So there were a lot of SaaS endpoints. And then more recently, all go-to-market tools are platform tools. So they're all in one. So we went from one end, best of breed. So buy an outreach and Gong, ZoomInfo, and a few others like best of breed, right? Now, all of them, Gong or outreach or ZoomInfo or well, they all have become platforms. They have all the
Yeah.
functionalities, right? And that's a trend that'll continue. What that tells you is the buyers are not interested now in they're suffering from the bloat, right? So they want one tool that does the job of 10 or 20. And I think that we already seen that transition happen from best of breed to all-in-one. I think that transition will continue where agents will kill a bunch of SaaS companies because
Yeah.
you don't need those 10 tools, even in a platform. Because an agent, you don't even need to log into a platform. It'll just come and tell you your meeting is booked. Now there's a tool for research. There's a tool for prospecting. There's a tool for dialing and bulk email sending. A good agent will say, screw all that. Like, I'm going to do however I do. I'll just get you the meeting.
Right.
So now
Right.
you don't need all these 10 different SaaS tools.
Right.
So yeah, there will be a lot of that technology is not built yet or not, but it's only a matter of time.
Yeah.
See,
I'm finding that to be a challenge myself, where I've recognized that there are efficiencies with, let's say using ZoomInfo for data and now all the other things that they're able to do, or Apollo and all the things that they can do. They've integrated Calendly, all that stuff. And it's nice to have one, but the pricing gets astronomical especially for a startup. So then on the flip side, what I've transitioned to is actually utilizing lots of agents, very small, nimble tools, but then it's really forced me to use Zapier and other tools to integrate along, which is, it's great that it all happens, but now you've got to pay fees to Zapier for the calls. So it'll be interesting to see how all of that shakes out. And, I also recognize that a lot of the AI that is being built in to these traditional SaaS solutions is eating away at their margin.
yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how all that shakes out.
Yeah. So the other big trend, I think, is you mentioned pricing. The SaaS, when it got bloated, it also got more expensive. And for the
Yeah.
buyer, they end up spending a lot. So I think those premium margin solutions or multiples, they're all going to have to give up their margins or give up their market share to lower price solutions. So in for some massive disruptions.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, massive disruptions and new entrants, do you feel like you're at liberty to kind of paint the broad strokes on your new venture?
Happy to at least talk about the problem that we're looking to solve.
Sure. Yeah. Be interesting.
So Amit was the founder of Clearbit, my co-founder here, helped build solutions for the sales team. And sales teams have a lot of intelligence on the buyers and a lot of data tools, and they know when the buyers come on a website or in market to buy and so on. Now, buyers do not have the same level of intelligence on product and sales team. And the best you can find is some charts on G2 or reviews, all of which is to look the same. Everybody writes the same content, and views are kind of rigged in favor of sales team. And so I feel like buyers miss the powerful data tool that sellers have. We want to change that balance and give buyer more power. And in doing so, we think that a lot of that we see with buyers tuning off to emails and phones and sellers sending too many emails and too many phones, that's caused a bit of a chaos. We think we can solve some of that problem.
Okay. And do you already know how you might go about solving that problem?
So we are doing a lot of research right now. We are speaking to 100 plus buyers and sellers in the next few weeks. So we'll have some ideas that we have validated. Since sellers don't know which buyers are in market, they pull a list from a list provider and send, say, 100 emails and 5 of them engage because they're in market, right? The other 95 end up getting annoyed. So
Right.
we're trying to create a go-to-market platform where only those 5 initiate the interaction and engage with sellers. So for sellers, end up being very high-value leads and very engaged leads.
Well, that's great. I think everybody will appreciate less spam, right? And it seems to me like it would be a win-win for both sides. If the sellers really know that these buyers are truly engaged and have skin in the game. And then on the flip side, if you can empower those buyers with key data points that are not so much skewed by, random or sometimes fake reviews, I could see that really being super powerful.
Right. We're grateful that we were able to get so much interest in doing this research.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be talking about the topic like for the coming weeks and months as you ramp up. I can't wait to follow along and see how this all comes together. I mean, your track record will surely continue and it'll be successful. I'm curious in closing, is there anything that, as it pertains to scaling businesses in the B2B space, are there any parting thoughts that you might have for founders or go-to-market specialists, either on the sales or marketing side, that you think they should take away from this podcast in order to scale more efficiently?
Good question. My one, I guess, word of wisdom would be, what worked for others would not work for you. So what I mean by that is, when trying to grow, what companies do, look at best practices. That somebody else did this and they got that result, right? Then they immediately run and copy and try to do the same. It's not going to work. They have to build those strategies based on who they are, what their market is. And so that's lesson number one. The other lesson is, do not copy your biggest competitor. That's the worst idea ever.
Right.
The third, it's better to be different than to be better. If there are 20 competitors, don't try to, everybody's copying the biggest competitor. And then for a buyer, they can't make the difference. And then that ends up rewarding the biggest competitor in a situation like this. If you start to look very different, I think there's disproportionate rewards in terms of growth.
I would agree. In fact, that aligns very, very closely with one of the points that I teach in my workshop at the UC Berkeley's Skydeck Incubator, where I tell all the founders there that playbooks are a myth, because what worked well for somebody in the past may have gotten them to a certain point a long time ago before the market has changed it to what it is today. And there are so many other factors, like there could be specific features that the new founder is bringing to market that's solving a very specific problem that is slightly different than what that competitor is solving, and does it in a different way. So playbooks are definitely a myth.
It's good for like a one-time reader, but it's not good for, like, you can't commit your future on playbook, other people's playbook.
Yeah. Well, how can people stay in touch with you and follow you on this new journey?
Don't call me. I don't pick up the phone. Email is not a good channel. LinkedIn is probably the best channel for me. So reach out to LinkedIn.
Fantastic. And I always ask companies that, of course, are a little bit further along, are you hiring? You're probably not ready to hire now, but in the coming weeks or months, I suspect you may be. What do you think would be your first hire?
So first, several hires would be software engineers. We'd be building these solutions quite rapidly. Starting 6 weeks, maybe kick this off 4 to 6 weeks. So a whole lot of talent, and then we'll go from there.
Well, thank you so much, Santosh, for sharing your knowledge. A lot of good nuggets that we tackled. I can't wait to see what happens next, and I'll be following you very closely. And again, thank you.
This was great. I enjoyed this conversation.
Likewise. All right. Bye.
Cheers.